Good morning. You're doing everything right and it's still not enough. And you're starting to wonder if that means that God isn't paying attention or if it maybe means that something's wrong with you. Like, you know what provision looks like. You've been in a season where you've had that, right? You've seen God come through on something so specific, like something you couldn't have even manufactured yourself. And you said thank you and you meant it and you kept going. And then that next thing came due, right? Like, what goes on in our day to day, right? The regular thing, the thing that just keeps coming around, like your electric bill, the client spot that didn't end up filling, the month that started off fine and ended up going sideways. Somewhere in the repetition of that, there was a question that started forming that you haven't said out loud yet because it doesn't sound like somebody who trusts God. That question is, does he know that I still need things? Because what you've seen, like you've seen what God can do in your life, right? You already know that he is capable. That question that you have underneath all of those things is whether his attention extends past the big moments. Like whether he's the kind of God who's going to show up for that dramatic rescue and then hands you the manual for what's coming next. That's where we are in Exodus 16. Have any of you ever felt that? If that's you, drop a yes in the comments and good morning. Have you ever felt like, God, I know that you'll be here in these big moments, but do you see me in the regular parts? Good morning. All right. If you guys are just coming in, I want to welcome you. Can you guys put good morning? Yes. If your response to the question is that you have felt God in those big grand morning moments, but when the next morning comes, when things go back to normal, sometimes it just feels like, God, are you going to take care of every need? Good morning. If you guys are new here, can you also put that in the comments? Good morning. I'm new. You could put your name, where you guys are from. How is your morning going so far? Good morning to each and every one of you. Letty, Kat, Jap, Grace, Cindy, Sandra, Create, Inspire, Dream, Mary, Carolyn, and Viticus, Jamie. Good morning to all of you guys. All right, so we're going to get started here pretty quickly. It is Friday, and I'm praying that you guys all have a beautiful morning so far. Before we get into this chapter, I want to ask you something. What is one area of your life where you're waiting for God to provide? To provide something specific. Maybe it's like something obvious, like a financial thing. Maybe it's a relationship thing. Maybe it's even direction or your health. Maybe a decision that you can't make yet because you're still waiting on information. What does that look like for you guys? It can be one word. It could be lengthy. Whatever that looks like. Whatever it is, just something, a short phrase in the comments. We're going to come back to it at the end of this live. And I pray that as we go through Exodus 16 today, it's going to be something that helps us to get through. I feel like I can't even hear the music. Can you guys? It's so quiet this morning. So here's what I want you guys to see before we open up the text. Israel left Egypt and they watched those plagues go. They walked into the Red Sea and they stood on the other side and they sang the song. Then they got to Elim, and that's where the 12 springs and the 70 palm trees were. Do you guys remember that from yesterday? By every single measure, it was available to them, and God had been faithful. And then Exodus 16 opens up, and then they're hungry. The thing that gets me about this chapter is not the hunger, because I feel like the hunger part, that's understandable, right? The thing that gets me is what the hunger did to their memory. Because within 2 verses of opening up the chapter, the people are actually looking back. They're looking back at Egypt and they're calling it good. And they're talking about what that meant. Like, they are talking about, like, in that scenario, they actually ate there. They were into forced labor at that point. Like, that was their scenario. And they watched their children being threatened there. They cried out to God for 400 years to get them out of there. And still, the moment that the need became urgent and very immediate, they looked the past looked so much better than it was. Have you guys ever felt that? Like, have you ever caught yourself like romanticizing a season that you know was not actually good for you? And you did it just because the uncertainty of where you are now, it feels so much harder than the familiarity of what you just left. Like, how many of you guys have done that? Like, you know what? Maybe that season was a little bit better before, because this one is really hard and I don't know what it's going to look like. I've done that. You want to return back to what you know, even if it was uncomfortable to you, because there's something familiar in that moment that at least you know what's going to happen. So, if you guys are just coming in, good morning. We are just getting started. I want to see you guys in the room. If this is your first time, I have a gift for you. Can you guys put new or good morning or your name or where you're from, whatever that looks like, whatever you want to put in there. We want to welcome you into this community. We do these Bible studies every morning, Monday through Friday. So we're just getting started because we start at 9 Central. We are in Exodus 16. So regardless of if today is your first day joining or you have been with us for a long time, I have all the replays available for you. Okay. Exodus 16, I think, is one of the most referenced chapters in the entire Old Testament. And most of the time, it gets taught as provision. It's as a provision story where God provides manna. How many of you are familiar with this one? God provides the manna and then Israel complains. Like, lesson, be grateful, right? Like, we want them just to be grateful, and that's how we see this story. And that's true, right? But that's also not the whole picture. And I think if we were to stop simply there, it's going to actually miss what God is doing. Because this chapter, it's not primarily about bread. It's about a pattern of provision. A provision that God was establishing so that his people would learn something specific about his character. How many of you guys have dived deeper into it? We're going to go all, like, as much as I can in the 2 hours that we're on here. But if you guys are just joining, good morning. I want to see you in the chat. I want to welcome you in. Today is a beautiful morning. And I want to know how your mornings are going. Like, how did it start? Was it rough? Today for me is one of those mornings where I just pray for strength. I'm praying for strength, that I don't get overwhelmed by the day, because it's already starting off a little heavy. So that would be my prayer to God is, give me strength, Father. Give me strength. We start our study each day with prayers. So we're going to get into that here in just a little bit. Can you guys add what your prayer is? What are you waiting for God to put into your scenario? What's that thing that you're praying, that need, that maybe it feels so simple? Like, what's one area of your life right now where you're waiting on God to provide something? A financial thing, a bill, a direction, health, a decision. Thank you for letting me know, Aunt Tina. Whatever it is, you guys can just put one word in there. That can be part of your prayer. If there's something separate, you guys can add that in. We go live Monday through Friday every day, and I go deep into scripture. So we're going to get started here. We're in Exodus 16. And if you're just finding this today, you don't need to catch up to be in this room. You're right on time. But we have all the replays available for you. On the bottom left hand of your screen, there's a gold icon with a little white arrow. There's the replays in there. There's a gift for you if you're new. Can you also put that in the chat? That you're new, or good morning, along with your prayers. I want to get that sent to you. Just click on that gold icon, and there is a little option that says new viewer live gift. Okay. What we do is we read the text and we slow down in a way that I believe that it deserves. We do the Hebrew when the Hebrew changes exactly as much as we need to know more in depth. We look at the world of these people, what it actually looked like, so that we can understand what they're experiencing, not just what they're doing. And then we follow where the text actually goes, so we don't just assume. So settle in, you guys. If you're not able to be in here for the full 2 hours, that is okay. You can catch all the replays. Okay, so we're going to start in prayer. You guys keep your prayers coming. Keep your good mornings coming. All of that. I want to welcome you in. Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for settling our spirit. I pray that this live brings a comfort to each and every one of us. I know that you see every need that we have before we even know it's there. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to gather together. To hear your word is such a gift, and we thank you for that. I pray for provision. I pray for strength and clarity, for a peace, for understanding. As you see the comments come in, Father, we know that you know all of the details of every situation that we are all facing. Please allow us to see you more, to gain a deeper dependence on you in these seasons where we may be struggling. And in the seasons where we walk out and we are celebrating, thank you for being right there with us throughout all of it. Thank you for giving us the prayer, the answer to the prayer that we've prayed, even if it may not look like what we imagined. Thank you for being such a beautiful, intentional Father. Thank you for being our protector, our provider, our healer, our banner, right? You are Jehovah. You are Yahweh. You are Lord over our lives, and we thank you for being that for us. Even when our faith may waver, when we may struggle or question, thank you for being patient with us. I pray for a strength and a peace for everybody on this live and on the replay today, that you have every situation handled. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. All right, so we are just getting started. You guys are right on time if you're just coming in. I'm going to give you a recap of where we were yesterday. We're in Exodus 16. Yesterday we were in Exodus 15. So they are two halves. They're two halves of the same chapter. The first half is the Song of the Sea, which is Moses' song. It is one of the oldest pieces of writing in the entire Hebrew Bible. I'm curious, for those of you guys that were on yesterday, is there something that stood out to you that you never knew? I loved the fact that Miriam prepared before she even left Egypt. She already knew that there was going to be something to celebrate. So at that point in Exodus 15, right, we have Moses' song, and Israel is on the shore, and the army is at the bottom of the water, right? God defeated, he closed the Red Sea. And then Miriam is with her tambourine, and the celebration started, right? It was very real. What a beautiful, to me, it was a beautiful celebration, right? And it got it deserved everything that it got. Then the chapter kind of kept going, and then 3 days later, they were in the wilderness of Shur. They didn't have water, right? And the water that they did find at Marah, it was bitter. So the same root of that is the same root word that Naomi uses in the book of Ruth when she tells about the women, when she tells the women of Bethlehem to call her Mara, not Naomi. And she says, call me that because my life has gone bitter. So in the middle of that, God actually reveals his name as Yahweh Rapha. Sometimes we know it referenced as Jehovah Rapha. And I love that he does this at the sea, at the bitter water. He is the Lord who heals, the Lord who restores, right? They thought God had just taken them out of this place, right? And they celebrated, and he had this big, grand, dramatic miracle that happened. So they knew him by that because they had gone through 10 plagues where they have seen God's power demonstrated. But they didn't know how to hold on to him and trust in that same faithfulness in the ordinary, in the simple things with every need. We talked about what that looked like psychologically for them and why sometimes we do that. And why, even though God had just performed and shown that he can cover and protect and surround them, why it's so understandable why they would go into that place, right? How many of you guys are a little bit, like you're starting to see a little bit more why these Israelites aren't quite as stubborn as what we think they are? I'm starting to. Today we're going to get deeper into that because that's where chapter 15 actually ends. It's resting. They rest for a moment at when they arrive, like they leave Marah and they arrive at Elim, and there's 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and then they camp there. They're resting just for a moment by that water that they thought was so bitter, and God planted a tree and said, this has been here the whole time. I've been providing. I have already known every need that you're going to have. I've already provided for you before you even asked. So Exodus 16 actually opens with them leaving Elim, and the story starts moving again. All right, so we're going to get into it. We are in Exodus 16. How many of you guys are following along in your Bible? I say this every day. I'm going to start saying this every day because some of you guys have started sending me what you're up to, and I love it. It's my favorite part of my day, like getting those messages. What are you guys up to as you're reading? Are you multitasking? Are you at work? Are you sitting outside? Are you guys taking kids to school, driving? Like, what does that look like for you? What does your morning look like as you're listening? I know that you can see me and all that I'm doing, but I love envisioning it as you guys put it in the comments. You're eating, errands, grocery, laundry. Yeah, it's a full 2 hours, so you guys are probably doing a lot during this time. But it's my way of getting to hang out with you. So, good morning as you guys are just coming in. We are getting into Exodus 16. We are just getting started. Oh, I love this. I love this. You're sitting by your pool. Laundry, makeup, waking up. Yes, for some of you, it's like 7:20. It's early. So good morning to every single one of you. If you are new here, can you also put that in the chat? I want to know what you're up to. I want to welcome you in. We have such a beautiful community, and we all want to welcome you in. So you can put your name, where you're from, what you're up to, whatever that looks like. I read from a New King James Version of Scripture, and we are in Exodus 16. Okay. So I'll read through verses 1 through 3, and you don't have to follow along in a Bible. I know some of you don't even have one, and that's okay. I'll read it for you, and then we'll dive deep into it. All right. So we are in Exodus 16, and it says, and they journeyed from Elim, and the congregation of the children of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they departed from the land of Egypt. Then the whole congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. I'm going to remind you guys, for those of you that are aware of this, and I'm also going to put this into perspective for those of you that are not aware. When when the Israelites left Egypt, there was over 2 million of them. So I want you to picture that as again, they are coming to Moses with complaints. And I want you to pay attention to what Moses does each and every time. Okay? He and Aaron essentially are leading these people. And there is a whole congregation of them, 2 million of them. But I love that the text also calls out that it is the 15th day of the second month. That is a very specific date in the text that the text gives us. They left Egypt on the 15th day of the first month. So it's been exactly 1 month after the Exodus. 1 month since they walked out of 400 years of forced labor. It's been 1 month since the Passover, and it's been about 30 days since God did what they cried out for generations to see done, right? He got them free out of Egypt. That was a 500-year promise that God fulfilled for them. He got them out. He got rid of the Egyptians, the pharaohs, all of the head of Egypt. They were all gone. All the people that had been causing opposition against the Israelites, they were gone. God fulfilled that. He protected them. All of these amazing, incredible things that God had did, it's only been about a month, 30 days. And now they're telling Moses that they wish that they had passed away in Egypt. Not gonna lie, it seems very dramatic. God had just done all of these things, and they went from praising him to the next moment wishing that they were, first of all, back in Egypt, and second of all, that they were going to be they wish that they passed away. Okay. So At this point in time, they're telling Moses, you know what? We wish that we had passed away in Egypt. And before we rush past this, because I think a lot of times people do this, I want to stay here because I think it's really hard for us to understand why they would go to such an extreme. Okay. It is one where, oh, give me 1 second. Erica, can you unmute her? She's actually good. The one that you just muted, I think you did that on accident. Before we rush past that, there's something psychologically that I want us to see. Okay. This is probably one of the most psychologically honest moments in all of Scripture, and I don't think it gets treated in that way. We a lot of times read it as ingratitude and we move on because there's something more specific that's going on. Thank you so much for that, Erica. I want you to notice what they say. What they say that they're missing, okay? There's pots of meat. And like they miss the pots of meat, like the bread that they ate to the fullest. They don't say that they necessarily miss Egypt. They say that they miss being fed. So in this moment, they just journeyed from Elim, and it is on the 15th day of the whole month. And then it says the whole congregation complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And they say to them, oh, actually, I didn't read verse 3, so that's probably why it doesn't make sense to you. And the children of Israel said to them, oh, that they had unalived in the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt when we sat by the pots of meat and when we ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out to the wilderness to unalive this whole assembly with hunger. Okay, so notice that. They're saying that they wish that they had the pots of meat and the bread that they ate until they were full. They miss being fed. They're not mourning the captivity. That would be, as crazy as that sounds, like that'd be a little bit much. They're mourning the certainty of this daily provision that the captivity actually gave them. So as they were in forced labor, at least they knew what tomorrow's meal looked like. They knew what to expect. It wasn't good food. It was rations that were given to somebody who was a slave. But it was predictable, right? It was right there. And now they're genuinely free. And they're hungry. And the freedom that they have is with an empty stomach in the wilderness, 1 month in with no visible source of food. And it's disorienting in a way that's very hard to reason your way through. So the wilderness of sin is not this moral designation. It's an interesting name for a place, right? Wilderness of sin. The name actually comes from the Hebrew root word that's related to the Sinai region. So it's actually a real geographical stretch of land between the Gulf of Suez and the interior of the Sinai Peninsula. It's an actual desert. There's rocky terrain. There's not a lot of vegetation. They don't have agricultural, there's nothing that can grow there. They don't even have an infrastructure. So in that world, it's very hot. There's over 2 million people in the heat, and they are going without food for an extended period of time. It's not just them being inconvenienced. It's them in crisis. They're in survival mode at this point because they have families and they have children and they have elderly people, animals. There's so many things with them. So the fear that they have, just like they were at the water, it's coming right back. Can you guys picture that? First they get out, they walk out of the sea, and the first thing that they experience is thirst. Okay? God provides, and now they find themselves again in a scenario where they're hungry now. And they do the same thing. And it makes me wonder, do they think that's what worked, is the complaining? Because they got what they wanted the last time. Do they think that's what's going to be? If they're super dramatic, then God's going to give them everything they want? I get that though. How many of you can understand this feeling? God, I know that you have done so much in the big, beautiful moments, but can you also provide to me with the small needs? I think that some of us don't come to him for that in the way that we probably should. We come to him when it's God, I don't know what to do. The situation is beyond what I can carry. But this one, where they are, it's like seemingly small. They're not going to him, they're going to Moses. I also don't want to read that complaint as like charitably, where it's not warranted. Because wishing for them to be unalived in Egypt over trusting God in the wilderness, it's not a good response. That should be your first posture. But we have to remember that these people's identities are so far gone. I don't want to like give them too much on that. But I do want to read it. Like, I don't want to read it shallowly and dismiss it. I don't want to dismiss it as a simple ingratitude, because we're going to miss the pattern that it actually exposes. I think this pattern is one of the most important things in this chapter. If they knew God could do something enormous, they had seen that. They had seen him do a lot in that moment. They even sung about it, but they weren't convinced that he was going to continue. Like, they weren't convinced that, like, have you ever thought in your mind, God, you've done something so big. Maybe that's all I deserve is that one time. I don't know if I'm even deserving of you continuing to show up for me. I think they knew him in the big grand moments. They weren't convinced that he was going to continue to show up. They believed in his power, but they weren't sure about his consistency. That's different. Power and faithfulness are two separate convictions, and Israel actually had formed them. They had only fully formed one of them. So I want to ask you, though, and I want you to sit with this for a second before you guys even answer. I know that we're probably going to give I already know the answer to some of this. So I feel like it's somewhat of an obvious question, but do you actually believe that God is faithful? Most of us would say yes without hesitation, right? I want to ask you this question differently. Do you live like he is? Right? Do you live your life as if you believe he is faithful? Because sometimes the gap between what we say we believe and how we actually move through our ordinary uncertainty, it tells us something about where we actually fall within that conviction. So knowing that, is your answer still the same? Do you actually believe that God is faithful? I know that so many of us said yes right away, but do you live like he is? I believe he is faithful, but I know that I don't live that way, which makes me wonder, do I genuinely believe that he's faithful? Because if I did, why wouldn't I live in that manner? All right, so if you guys are just coming in, we are in Exodus 16. I'm going to read through verses 4 through 5. We have just gotten started. And if you're new here, can you guys put that in the chat? Because I have a gift for you, okay? And we want to welcome you. And I asked each of you a very deep question. Sorry, my thing is really yellow. Let me adjust my lighting, okay? This weather here in Nebraska, I don't want to look like I'm just completely orange. So give me 1 second. Okay. Are you guys good? All right. So I probably should have adjusted it just a little bit more. Sorry. I'm still here. That didn't do anything. It's fine. As long as I'm not like yellow, that's all I care about. All right. So we are in Exodus 16 and we are through verses 4 through 5. And I just asked you guys, do you believe that God is faithful, right? Most of us say yes right away. We'd say yes without hesitations. But I'm going to ask you guys differently. Do you live like he is? Because that might change your answer. Okay? All right, we're going to read through Exodus 4 through 5. Exodus 16, verses 4 through 5. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day, that I may test them whether they will walk in my law or not. And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily." All right, so the Lord is saying, I'm going to make bread fall from the sky. That alone is a miracle, right? And he says, I want to see how these people, whether they're going to walk in my law or not. That means that there's a daily portion. And he's saying there's a specific amount, not a monthly supply, but or like a yearly stockpile. I'm going to give them a daily quota. And then he says, this is actually a test. The provision and the test are the same thing. And I want you to think about what God is setting up here, because he already knows what he's going to do. He's going to provide food for 2 million people in the middle of a desert every single morning. That's incredible. When I've pictured this, I know I've said this time and time again, but when I've pictured any time of the Israel, like of them walking, like the Hebrews walking in the desert, I'd never pictured 2 million people. So the fact that God is going to every single day provide for over 2 million people, like we think the miracle with the loaves of bread and the fish feeding over 5,000, because that was just 5,000 men. Most scholars believe that that number is beyond 5,000 because there were women and children. We think that's incredible, and it is, right? Because he made something out of nothing. He's doing that here in the desert with over 2 million people. And he's doing it not just once, but every day. He could have just done it once, right? He could have created like a warehouse of supplies and they could have drawn from it. He could have just provided it all at once and they would have never had to wonder about tomorrow. But he chose not to. He chose daily, which I find that to be very interesting, because the text explicitly says that the daily pattern was intentional and it was designed to test whether they would trust what he said. Not just believe that he's capable, but like walk in what he told them. He said, I want you to follow the specific instruction. Gather what he said, stop when he said stop, rest when he said rest. Like that provision required ongoing participation and an ongoing trust in a way that a one-time massive supply would have never had. God knows exactly what he's doing because he has done the big miracles and done it all at once, and they know him for that. They want to see, like he wants to show them that he's going to show up for them every day, in every scenario, time and time and time again, but he needs to test them. So in that world, bread was actually not a luxury item. It was the primary caloric source for most people. There was wheat bread, barley bread, flat bread that was baked on stones or like in clay ovens. So when the text says bread, the audience like a lot of time understands, like the audience that's hearing this, like us, we tend to equate it. They can understand what God was saying, like what he was promising to them. They knew that it was going to be their most basic daily necessity. This was the thing that you couldn't go without. God was saying, I'm going to provide the thing that keeps you alive every single day and in the right amount. All that you have to do is just go get it. He was teaching them, like in that moment, something that was more than how to survive a food shortage. I don't know why I can't talk today, so bear with me, please. Okay? He was showing them something beyond, and I love that. It was a daily return. There was a daily trust that he was exercising in the smallest act of going out and gathering what he promised would be there. They had to show that. If I provide for you, are you going to actually go out and get it too? It's kind of like it reminds me of the man at the pool of Bathsheba. I don't know why I can't think of the name. Bethsaida. That pool, it reminds me kind of that when he says, do you want to be healed? Right? I can give you what you want, but are you going to actually do what it requires? Bethsaida, yes. I don't know why. My mind is just it's like if I were a computer today, I'd be lagging. That's me this morning. All right, so we are in Exodus 6:16, and I'm going to read through verses 6 through 8. All right. So it says, then Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, at evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your complaints against the Lord. But what are we that you should complain against us? And Moses said, this shall be seen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening and the morning bread to the full. For the Lord hears your complaints, which you have made against him. And what are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord. So, Moses says something in this verse that I think is really easy to miss because we're kind of focused on the food part of it. He says, the Lord hears your complaints. So in Hebrew, the original word for that, for complaints, it actually appears almost exclusively in this chapter and then the surrounding wilderness narratives. So it's not the same word that we think of as like a casual expression of frustration. It carries the idea of like grumbling or murmuring or like this persistent low-level expression of discomfort, like a discontent person, that they have like like they're discontent with a person that has a level of authority. What Moses is doing here is he's using it in this moment to specifically redirect what Israel's doing. So they're aiming their entire frustration at him and Aaron, and Moses says the complaint is actually going to God. He's the one hearing it. We're not the ones that you're actually arguing with. So what he's doing is redirecting it, and it matters because of what's going to follow, right? God doesn't respond to the complaint with a correction first. He responds with provision. He says, listen, I heard, like he hears them. He knows exactly what they need. And he actually made a plan before Moses even delivered their words back to him. Morning and evening. Obviously, those are two different things, right? There's two different things that are going to come out of it. The evening, they get meat. And in the morning, there's going to be bread. And the glory of the Lord made visible. So God wasn't just feeding hungry people at this point in time. He was structuring that provision in a way that it carried its own message to them. So every morning they're going to wake up and see his faithfulness before they did anything else. And every evening they're going to receive something additional. That day would begin and end with evidence that he is there. I can't help but think, how much of that do we have in our day-to-day? That we wake up and there's immediate provision. We go to bed or in the evening before the night ends and there's immediate provision, but we don't see it. We're too busy complaining to our significant other, to our friends and family, to, whomever you want to complain to. Post about it on Facebook. Oops, I didn't mean to say that. On social media, right? You post about it everywhere. You talk about it. God's like, the provision is already there. I already had this in mind. But we're too focused on the thing to recognize it. I'm sure I do that every day. I know I did that this morning. I know I do it in the evening. I do it more than what I should. Yeah, everybody's still complaining today. Exactly. So we're in about 8 verses in, and what we've already covered, like we've talked about what Israel said, what they missed, how God responded. before before he even sent food. So we've been in this so far for about 8 verses. But I want you to stay with me because we're going to get to the quail and the manna. And there's something in the details of how it arrived that I think a lot of people, they overlook completely. All right. So in verses 9 through 12, we are in Exodus 16. I'm going to read through verses 9 through 12. And it says, Then Moses spoke to Aaron, Say to all the congregation of the children of Israel, Come near before the Lord, for he has heard your complaints. Now it came to pass as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked towards the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I have heard the complaints of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, At twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. I want to stop in this moment because it says that they looked towards the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in a cloud. So they were looking at the wilderness when the glory appeared. They weren't looking up. They were looking at the sea behind them. They were looking at that long stretch that they had ahead. There was a lot of emptiness, a lot of uncertainty. They didn't have any resources, like the resourceless wilderness. That actually triggered the fear in the first place, right? A lot of those things. That's exactly where the glory showed up, where their fear was focused on, where the uncertainty was for them. That's where God showed up, not in the sky, right there in their line of sight. So in the Hebrew word, the word translated glory, it actually comes from the root word meaning weight or heaviness. God's glory is not simply brightness or light. I think it's often described in that way, and it is. But in the Hebrew, this word in this sentence, it's actually a substantial, weighty, undeniable presence of God. It is the real thing, the thing that can't be explained or argued with, because when it hits a person, it happens before they even have time to construct a response. So when he appeared in the cloud, it's that same pillar of cloud that he had been using to lead them. The same one that stood between Israel and Egypt at the sea. That presence that had been traveling with them all along. Suddenly he made himself undeniable. They weren't worshiping or praying. They were complaining. And they looked up from their frustration and saw the glory of God present in the very thing that had been with them since Egypt. Think about what that potentially felt like, right? You're hungry, you're afraid, and you've just said out loud that you wish you had been unalived back in Egypt rather than here. I can't even imagine, when I've been complaining about something and I've been dramatic about it, not that it's unwarranted, but dramatic. And then if God appeared to me, I'd be obviously I'd be shocked, but I almost feel like I'd be like, whoa, let me rethink that. There's something in that sequence that I just want to sit with, because the glory doesn't appear after they get their hearts right. It doesn't even show up after Moses calms them down and says, you're yelling at us, you're complaining to us, but you really should be complaining to God. It appears when they're still in the middle of their complaint. And what God says, what God says when it appears isn't a rebuke. It's, I hear you, and here's what I'm going to do. If your understanding of how God works requires you to clean up yourself before he pays attention, this verse is worth sitting with. So many of us feel like I can't come to God with the real thing, the thing that I'm actually feeling. I need to talk to my friends about it. I need to talk to my mom, my sister, my brother, my dad, my aunt, whoever, right? You want to talk to everybody else but God sometimes, because we feel like I can't say that to the Lord. I need to clean this up, and I need to come with a prayer that's more polished, right? This verse should show you that you don't need to do that. He's not waiting for you to come to him differently before he responds. He shows us that he went to them and he heard them exactly as they were. There's nothing that surprises God. There's nothing that we can keep from him. He knows every detail of our hearts. He knows every thought we've had and will have, every feeling that we have currently felt and will feel. There's nothing to keep from him. And he's not asking you to do that. He could. He deserves that. He deserves all the respect and more. He deserves us coming to him in a posture of gratitude and thankfulness and more than what I can even express, right? He deserves that and more than what we could ever even give. But he's not asking for that. He's asking for your heart, the real, honest version of your heart. And I want to know, what do you know about God's character now that you wouldn't have known without having a hard season? I don't think I would have known how intentionally he provides for us. I don't think I would have known how deeply he loves us. What is that for you? That's mine, his love and the depth of it. I still haven't experienced the fullness of it. How much he heals. Yeah, I love that. You guys are very similar to me. I want to know what that is for you. That you would never have known if you hadn't gone through that hard season. That's what he took me through. He healed me. He protected me. He shielded me from things that I'm not even aware of. And he loved me, and he was so gracious with me in the questioning and the doubting and the complaining, right? He could have absolutely come to them in this moment and been like, how are you even going to complain? I just showed you. Or why didn't you ask me? All you had to do was ask. He doesn't do that. He just says, I heard you. And I love that Moses says, your complaint isn't with us, it's with him. And I believe that Moses does that because he knows that when the provision happens, he does not want it to appear as if they are the ones that saved them. He wants all glory to go to God, as it deserves to be. So when we look at the Exodus 16, verses 13 through 15, this part is about the quail and the manna. So in this moment, see, now it's getting darker. This light today, driving me nuts. Do you guys remember that day when it was raining? It was like a Friday, like my OGs, like my daily ones. No, because you guys were all on here, and it was like TikTok wouldn't push out my live, and my audio was being annoying, and my lighting was all over the place. That's what it feels like today with the lighting. Because remember, I was like really dark to the point where you guys almost couldn't see me, and then it got really orange. And then I was like, okay. And then I got really, really bright. That's what it feels like today. I'm going to be adjusting any and everything today. Okay, sorry. I'm waiting to see if these guys are going to walk. There's apologies too. I doubt that you guys can even hear. There's people doing construction on the house next to me. I hope that you can't hear it, but there's men that are walking back and forth. So sorry if I get distracted. Sometimes I need to see, because sometimes they'll come up here and say oh, we need to get into your backyard. So good. I'm glad you guys can't hear anything. It's noisy. All right. I'll get into Exodus 16. And good morning if you guys are just coming in. You are right on time. We are in Exodus 16 and we have gone through a lot. We have gone through a lot already. We've been on for about an hour. And we're going deep into scripture. So if you are new here, good morning. You guys can say that. We want to welcome you in. You can put your name, you can put whatever. At the bottom left-hand corner, if at any point you guys need to go, there's also the replays. That's all in that little area along with that gift. So thank you guys. I welcome you. All right, so we're going to read through verses 13 through 15 in Exodus 16. It says, "So it was quail that came up at evening and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay all around the camp. And when the layer of dew lifted there, on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance, as fine as frost on the ground. So when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, 'What is this?' For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, 'This is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Let every man gather it according to each one's need, 1 omer for each person. According to the number of persons, let every man take for those who are in the tent.'" So I want to talk about the quail really quick, okay? I'm going to read what my commentary says, and then I'm going to give you guys a little known fact, all right? The quail, so the psalmist removed all doubt about whether these birds of the partridge family were not real birds, but something else, for he called them feathered fowl in the preceding line of the I'm not even going to say that. I don't know why I can't say it. It referred to the coming of the quails as God having rained meat on them. That is in Psalm 78:27. Okay. So in that chapter 78, verse 27, it's referred to as feathered fowl. So the psalmist in this is basically saying that they're removing all doubt by calling them quails. Because some people said that they're not of the partridge family, I guess. So upon return to their former habitat, these migratory birds would often fall on the ground, exhausted from prolonged flight. So in ancient Egyptian paintings, people were shown catching quails by throwing nets over the brush where they were nesting. Okay? In omer, it was slightly more than 2 quarts. So basically, the provision of manna on 6 days, like he gave them omer. So I wanted you guys to just have a little bit of background of what the quails were and the omer was. So the word manna actually comes directly from this question, right? Where it says, when they say like, "What is this?" For they didn't know what this was. And God says to them, "This is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat," right? They woke up in the morning and they saw something on the ground that they had never seen before. And so their immediate response is, "What is this?" As I think we all would do, right? We would all be like, "What is this substance? This is new. We're in the desert. What is on the ground? Is it like bad?" So that word manna comes directly from that question. So in Hebrew, the word actually is man. Man who actually means what is it? So the food that sustained Israel for 40 years in the wilderness, it got its name from the question that they asked when they first saw it. It actually means, what is this? And so the most famous supernatural provision in the entire Old Testament is named after the confusion of the people who received it. I love that God didn't name it before he sent it. He just let them name it. And they named it what their honest response was at that moment. It wasn't faith or gratitude. It was bewilderment. They're like, "What is this?" I actually think there's a lot of significance in this, though. It's like kind of subtly in there. God's provision didn't require their understanding before they arrived, like before he gave it to them. It didn't wait for them to recognize what it was, or to categorize it, or even to receive it with the right posture. It was already there, on the ground, every morning, and the only thing that it required is that they go out and gather it. So when you look at the description in verse 14, it says, "And then the layer of dew lifted there on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance as fine as the frost on the ground." Okay, it's small and round and fine as frost, which is interesting because they're in the desert. So they would notice this. The text later adds like it was white like a coriander seed and it tasted like wafers and honey. Whatever it was physically, like a lot of scholars have debated what that was for centuries. Some connect it to a natural substance produced by certain insects in the Sinai region. But even with those connections, it can't account for the scale, or the timing, or the 6-day cycle, or the fact that it didn't appear on the Sabbath. It was something that was a natural occurring phenomenon that was being spiritually interpreted. So what the text is doing is it's presenting it as God's direct provision. And he's giving it on a schedule, and it's structured around his rhythm. I think the thing that I find to be even more interesting about this is manna, like about the manna, is that it's actually like how the thing that I find so interesting is how ordinary it had become in their lives. Like that first morning, everybody saw it and then they asked what it was. And by the second year, they were tired of it. By the time we get to Numbers 11, they were calling it worthless. So that same provision that felt like a miracle on day one had become this daily expectation that they stopped appreciating. The extraordinary had become just part of their routine. And I think about how many times in our lives we have done that same thing with a provision that we've prayed for. Like that answer that we waited on. That in the moment it felt so overpowering in our lives. And we pray and God lifts it. And we've been waiting on it and it happens. And then the thing that God finally brought through for us. And then somewhere in our day-to-days, like along the way, it stopped feeling miraculous. And it just became something that we have. You know, I used to pray that I was able to be at home, right? Like when I was in my 9-to-5 in my corporate career, when the possibility of working at home was even introduced, I was like, this is amazing. I would love that. That'd be incredible. I can't even imagine what that would be like, right? And then I started a business and I was like, how amazing would it be if I was working my business full time? How amazing would it be if this was the only thing that I did and I got to stay at home and be in charge of my days? And I sat and I thought and pray about it. And then it happens. And then how quick I am to be stressed and complain. And sometimes be ungrateful and almost sometimes want to go back to having a 9-to-5. I'm like the Israelites, right? The Hebrews, when they were like, I would rather go back to Egypt. Because at least I'd go back to something that was consistent, right? A consistent paycheck, consistency, and just going to work and knowing that I do that on my 9-to-5 and then I come home and I'm done, right? How often do we do that? Where the thing that we pray for, we just stop noticing it, that it's so amazing. We stop noticing it in the way that we noticed it the first time. That's not their character failing. It's not unique to Israel. This is a very human pattern. Our brain is remarkable about adapting to new norms. The brain is remarkable at that. Psychologically, this is called, what is the word? It's hedonic adaptation. All right, so essentially what this is, regardless of if I said the word wrong or not, because I can't remember it exactly. It sounds exactly like that, okay? So we return to a baseline level of satisfaction regardless of what changes around us. So when something extraordinary becomes ordinary, we move on looking for that next thing that will feel significant to us, right? How many of you have prayed for, like you've put something on your dream board? I stopped doing that a while ago. But I put a goal that was like a massive dream on my dream board. And I prayed about it. And then it came to be. And then I'm living in it. And it's just on to the next. And I'm like, I hit a goal and it feels empty and I move on to the next. I don't even live in that moment long enough to fully be immersed in it, to be fully grateful for it. Because we adapt, right? The extraordinary becomes ordinary and we move on to the next thing. We look for that next thing of significance. God knew that about his people when he designed the daily rhythm of manna. That provision actually wasn't meant to become the background. It wasn't meant to become the background of their lives. It was meant to be a daily return, a daily awareness, this daily acknowledgement that the bread was there because He put it there. God's the one that did that. I'm going to get a drink, but I'm going to ask you guys, I'm going to ask you something as I do that. Okay, so you guys can put this in the comment section. So we're in Exodus 16 right now, but I want to know one word that you would put in there. So at the beginning of the live, I asked you guys a question, right? The area of which you're waiting on God to provide something. I want you to think for a moment about what you have already received in that category that maybe you've stopped counting. What's one thing that you are waiting for provision on that you've already received? And you've just decided that maybe the continuance of that isn't coming. Does that make sense? If you want me to elaborate on that, I can. But what does that look like? That one word that you guys are putting in. We're going to come back to that as we always do. But I want you to think about that, okay? These are interesting. I love that. Love, marriage, feeling content with having God in your daily life. Wow. A lung transplant. Wow. All right. So I'm going to read in Exodus 16, verses 16 through 21. All right. Are you guys still with me? I know you're putting some stuff in the chat, but. So we're going to read from verses 16 through 21. It says, "This is the one thing which the Lord has commanded. Let every man gather according to each one's need, 1 omer for each person according to the number of persons. Let every man take for those who are in his tent." Then the children of Israel did so and gathered, some more, some less. So when they measured it by omers, he who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack. Every man had gathered according to each one's need. And Moses said, "Let no one leave any of it till morning." Notwithstanding, they did not heed Moses, but some of them left part of it until morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was angry with them. So they gathered it every morning, and every man according to his need. And when the sun came hot, it melted. It melted. Sorry. I can't ever say the word melted. Melted. Because I grew up saying it melted, and my husband always makes fun of me because I'm not saying it correctly. Okay. It's omer. It's an omer. Okay. Thank you, Christine. It's omer. Am I saying it right now? Omer? I'm not going to say melted, right? So, at this point in time, when we're looking at this, an omer, I want to go deeper into that, okay? So what this actually is, in that world, an omer is actually approximately 2 liters of dry goods. So each person in the camp, they were supposed to gather 2 liters of manna. So for families of 5, that's 10 liters. For families of 10, that's 20 liters. And so for every household, they essentially gathered according to its size. So then something remarkable actually happened in the measuring. Some people gathered more than what they needed, and some gathered less. So when they measured it by omer, everybody had exactly the right amount. The excess, it actually equalized. And then the shortage filled it in. So scripture doesn't exactly explain the mechanism in which this happened. It just explains the result. So God had structured the provision so that it was sufficient for each person, regardless of how much or how little had been gathered. So then there was the instruction. It said, do not keep any until morning. And some of them did, right? And then the morning, when the morning came, it was full of worms and it smelled. And Moses was mad. He was angry. And the next day, everybody gathered again, and the sun got hot. And what was left on the ground, it was melted away. And so I want to focus on this. I want to focus on what God was building into this pattern. So there's a daily provision that requires daily trust, right? So if you can stockpile, you're going to stop depending on Him. If you can create a supply on your own, you're going to start feeling like the continuation of your provision is only in your hands. God actually designed that manna specifically so that option wasn't even available to them. It could not be saved. It wasn't going to keep. So every single morning that you woke up, you questioned, that question was alive in your mind again. Will He provide again today? And every single morning He did. And He did that for 40 years. That is the faith formation that's happening under the surface of the food. They had been a people who had been in forced labor. And they were being reformed into people who knew that they could trust, who knew how to trust, who knew how to receive something from Him, who knew how to actually return to God, not only in those dramatic, crazy moments of miracles, right? But the ordinary daily moments with Him. That manna, it was actually forming them in the way that small disciplines form. In the same way it forms our character. It happens slowly and repeatedly, and in a way that only becomes visible over time. I also want to point out, I'm curious how many of you guys knew this. So there's something about the provision in this chapter that a lot of people aren't aware of. So Paul actually references the manna in 2 Corinthians verse 8 when he's talking to the church about the church in Corinth about generosity. He quotes from verse 18 of this chapter. His point is that the same God who equalized the manna for Israel at work is at work in the church. So I'm going to read it to you guys. It's in 2 Corinthians verse 8. So let me get there really quick for you, okay? So 2 Corinthians verse 8. It says, "Therefore I urge you to reaffirm your love to Him." Is that right? Yeah. I don't know why that doesn't sound right. In 2 Corinthians verse 8. No. It says, yeah, I wasn't reading from the right place. "For we do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, of our trouble, which came to us in Asia, that we were burdened beyond measure, above strength, so that we despaired even of life." Then it goes on. I'll read verse 9. "Yes, we had the sentence of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves, but in God, who raises the dead, who delivered us from the great death, and will also deliver us, in whom we trust that He will still deliver us." That's in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8. Okay. What he's doing in that moment is he's talking about this, what's happening in verse 18 of Exodus 16. His point is that the same God who equalized the manna for Israel is at work in the church. So those who have more contribution, those who have more contribute, so that those who have less are supplied. So what he's saying is the equality of the manna becomes a picture of how God's people are meant to operate with each other. The provision wasn't just about the individual, it was the structure. It was pointing to something more communal. And so I find it to be so interesting how regardless of what they took, God still provided for each and every one. How many of you knew that about the manna? There's probably a lot of you that knew that. But I find that to be so interesting because the way that I pictured it when I first read it, or I've ever heard the story told, is that the manna appeared and they had what they needed. But I guess I didn't go deep enough into it to understand that it was rationed and it was placed in a way that regardless of what you took, God was still going to provide for you, and that it wasn't going to be good the next day, that you had to have that daily dependence on Him. So when we look into verses 22 through 30, it says, And so it was on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. Am I still saying it wrong? I feel like that's how I said it before. An omer. I don't know. Omer? And the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses, and they said, Return. And then he said to them, This is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today, and boil what you will boil, and lay up for yourselves all the remains to be kept until morning. So they laid up till morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. Then Moses said, Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th day the Sabbath will be none. Now it will happen that some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather, but they found none. And the Lord said to Moses, How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath, therefore he gives you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. Okay, so there's a lot. I find it to be interesting that, of course, God wants to keep the Sabbath, right? And that he gave them very specific instructions and all of that. But I think there's more happening in this verse. So the Sabbath is introduced before the law at Sinai, right? Before the 10 Commandments, before Moses goes up to the mountain, before that formal covenant that is established in Sinai in Exodus 19. The Sabbath is introduced here, and it's in the manna narrative. It's as a built-in feature of provision. There's a little known fact about it that I want to share with you guys, because most people assume that the Sabbath begins at Sinai, right? In the commandments, it actually begins here. So God wove it into the structure of the food. He said 6 days the manna appears, and on the 6th day, double it. On the 7th day, there's none, right? That is the weekly rhythm of rest, and it was embedded into the provision before it was ever commanded into the law. I want you to notice what happened on the 6th day. So the rulers of the congregation, they came to tell Moses that they had gathered twice as much. And they were surprised because the following day, the daily pattern for almost a week, and then on the 6th day, the amount was doubled and they didn't know what to do with it. And Moses had to explain what God had already built into that system. And so that essentially the provision was ahead of them. So the instruction for the Sabbath was already embedded into the bread before anybody had formally told them about the Sabbath. So then on the 7th day, some of them went out anyway, right? They did what they weren't supposed to, did what they were not instructed to do. They went out looking for manna on the day that God had already told them that there's not going to be any. And so I want to read this carefully so that I don't read it just as a simple disobedience, though it is that. I think there's something more specific happening to the people who went out on the 7th day. They couldn't rest. That need felt too ongoing for them, too urgent. It felt too impossible. It was too impossible for them to ignore for a full day, Like, what if today was the day that it doesn't come back? Or like, what if that double portion was a mistake? Like, what if I miss something by staying in? Like the anxiety of scarcity, it doesn't go quiet just because you've been fed for 6 days in a row, especially if you just spent 400 years having provision given and taken away by somebody else's decision. So these were people whose food had never been their own. They had worked their bodies into the ground for Egypt for somebody else's benefit. And now, when they're in the wilderness, they're being asked to trust a provision that they could not control. And it's on a schedule that they didn't set, and it's in amounts that they didn't determine. And then they're told to stop looking for it for one day out of the week. The Sabbath isn't just a physical rest. For these people in this moment, it was a practice of trust at its most direct form. This was God saying, on this day, I want you to stop trying to secure what I've already secured. I will take care of tomorrow. I want you to stay where you are. And some of them, they chose to go out anyway, and they found nothing. That provision is exactly what God said it was going to be. It was present when he said it was going to be present. It was absent when he said it was going to be absent. And it was consistent, and it was faithful, and it was entirely on his terms. I want to say something very slowly because I think this whole chapter is trying to go to this place. And I want to show it to you guys. God did not designate the manna to make Israel uncomfortable or comfortable. He designed it to form something inside of them specifically. He was forming a people who knew how to stop, who knew how to receive without grasping, right? Who knew how to trust the provider with a day that they couldn't see the provision for yet. And I think many of us have never learned that. We know how to work, and we know how to solve, and we know how to optimize and prepare and to stay one step ahead of our needs, our family's needs, and probably other people's needs, right? Most of the time, that's good. That's responsible. That's us stewarding what God has called us to. But there's a specific version of a constant productivity that is not provision. It's a fear with good habits, and it's attached to that. It's the inability to stop because stopping feels like falling behind. Like it's the inability to rest because rest requires trusting that the need that you have will still be there when you get back to it. That the Sabbath is exposed exactly as that in Israel. And I think for some of us, if we're being truthful, it would expose that same thing. And I know because many of the women that are on this live are women in business, right? Some of you are not. Some of you are in a position of leadership. Some of you are stewarding your household, whatever that looks like, right? We wear many titles, but none of them are lazy. That is not the problem. The problem is actually the other direction. It's the inability to stop because the need always feels too present and too real to put down for even just a day. God built rest into provision. Rest is holy. He did that on the seventh day. He modeled that for us in Genesis. He showed us that he did the work, right? He created, he built rhythms and ecosystems and patterns and provision and created humans, right? What did he do on the seventh day? He rested, not because he needed to. He did it to model it for us because he knows how necessary it is. And I get passionate about this because I didn't understand the depth of the gift that this actually is until I fully leaned into it. God built the rest into provision. He didn't ask them to rest and figure out the food on their own. He doubled the provision so that the rest was covered before the question could even form. And still, some of them went out. The provision is not the issue. The posture is. The posture of it is. How many of you feel like I can't rest? I can't even enjoy my weekends. I still gotta work. It's fine. My kids are older, or like they're playing and they're distracted, or like I gotta get to this email. I can't be fully present in dinner, or like when I'm with my family, I have this endless to-do list in my mind. I'm just constantly going. My mind doesn't shut off. God modeled that for us because he doesn't want us to live that way. He doesn't want us constantly worrying about tomorrow. He doesn't want us constantly feeling like, is this going to be taken care of? The things that we tend to worry about to that extent, those are things that we were never intended to worry about because He has already provided. He's already given us everything that we need so we can lean into that rest. I want to know what it would actually look like for you to rest in something that God has already covered. What would that look like for you? Would that look like impossible? Would that look like beautiful, peaceful, a far off goal? How many of you feel like that's not even, like you've gotten to this point in your life where it feels like, I can't stop. I don't know how to stop. It's available to you. You have to retrain your mind. You have to retrain your mind in His goodness, right? You guys have heard me talk about this before, like the part of my testimony. The reason why when I coach women, we start with who He is. We have to know that He's going to provide. This entire transformational journey that I take you guys on in Eden and Empire, like in the paid community, it's a transformation journey, but it always points back to Him. We are retraining our minds to trust in Him in the storm, in the provision, in the uncertainty, in the doubt, in the waiting, in every element of it. We have to keep our eyes focused on Him because 9 times out of 10, the things that we are worried about, He has already taken care of. We just have to go with that next faithful step. That is what truly constitutes a successful kingdom-driven business, is that full trust and surrender in Him, right? One of the things that we don't do, and what I coach women to do very early on, is to rest, which goes in direct opposition of what the world tells you to do. It tells you to hustle harder, be more, make more, right? It tells you more at the sacrifice of the things that are sacred to you. One of those being rest. One of the number one things being rest. That is one of the first things that God showed us in Scripture, is rest is holy. If the God of our lives, right, the Lord of all, the creator of the universe, saw it worthy, necessary enough to rest on the 7th day, why do we think we can't? Why do we think that we are above that? You as a mother, your duties will still be there. You will still be a beautiful mother. Your family will still be taken care of. Your business and your clients will still be there. And I'm going to tell you, if your clients cannot allow you to rest, they are not your clients. That is an expectation that my clients know that I have a family and they are the most important thing to me. That my identity and my wholeness and my physical and mental health is a priority. And if you don't understand that, then you're not the client for me, because I am a person. I am not just an engine, right? And that I am not at the mercy of your schedule. I mean that with all the love, but I'm not. That my boys are my priority. And sometimes that means that the work that I'm doing is not on your schedule. And I mean that with all the love. Because that paycheck doesn't mean more to me than my family. That the time that it's taking in my mental space with the endless to-do list, it isn't worth my peace. What would rest actually look like for you? Yes, in order to be that best version of me, I deserve rest, right? You all deserve rest. What would that look like for you guys? Some of you asked when the Sabbath is. I don't think it's as cut and dry as a lot of us think it is. God just wants to, I believe, you guys can challenge me on this and that's totally fine. I don't believe that God is saying it has to be on Friday night until Sunday morning. I don't think that it means to be that. I think that it means to take intentional, specific time to rest. Rest needs to be built into your rhythm. It cannot be something that is an afterthought. I don't think that God genuinely cares when the rest is. He wants to ensure that you do it. That is my wholehearted opinion. I think that if it were, that would be in the New Testament saying that it has to be on every single Friday from 6 a.m. until Sunday at midnight. That is my honest opinion. I believe that He gives it to us the ability to make that decision because He knows our days are not all the same. He just wants you to adhere to it. So some people say like the Sabbath is not something that we honor. I need to scoot forward. The Sabbath is not something that they honor because it's an Old Testament, it's an Old Testament idea, right? I believe it's needed even more today. In a world that tells you to do more, be more. More. Everything is demanding more of you. Social media, work, friends and family. When do you rest? When do you guys rest? That's an actual question. When do you rest? Is rest built in for you? It is for me now. Weekends are untouchable for me. There is nothing that I will do for anybody on a weekend. I'm sorry. There's no amount of money that can get me away from my family unless it's an emergency. I just won't work on the weekends. And for a period of time, until I retrained my brain, I didn't work in the evenings either. Until I had to get out of that hustle mentality. Until work wasn't overtaking me. I had to get out of that. And now I can come to it in a place where like, if I need to, that's fine, but it doesn't overtake me. So what does that look like for you guys? When do you actually rest? Not just go to sleep, but rest. Thank you for that. Rest is productive. Rest is holy. You deserve it. I could go on and on. I could spend a whole entire life with this because it is one of the easiest. It is the one that I think that we, as mothers, as wives, as business owners, as fathers, some of you guys are on that. You have a beautiful day, Auntie. It is one of the things that we power through, and we are always feeling a lack of something. We are always feeling like we are less than in some area. You know why I don't call things balance? Because it doesn't exist. There is no such thing as balancing a life and a family and a business. The scales will never be equal. You will not find where they're all in perfect harmony. I'm sorry, maybe sometimes they do feel like that in the moment, but in all actuality, in the way that the world tells us that business actually is it constantly feels like the scales are always like this. Your family's down here. If you have a massively successful business, that comes with a cost, right? If your family is your priority, your business tends to go like this. And if your family and your business are all up here, then your health is usually down here, right? It's never like this. If you found that, share your secret with me. I don't know a business owner, no matter how successful they are, will tell you that it is in perfect equilibrium at all times, because it's not. It's a unicorn and it doesn't exist, right? The need will still be there tomorrow. The client will still be there tomorrow. And again, if they're not your person, right? Why spend so much of your time worrying about the things that more than likely are never going to come to be? And that to-do list, try it. Try to wait. Think of the thing that's the most urgent to you. That's my challenge to you guys. The thing that feels like it's so urgent, right? Don't do it. Don't do it today and see what happens. I challenge you that. Because I guarantee you it's still going to be there tomorrow. And if it's that urgent, then that's like a procrastination problem, probably. But even still, it will still be there tomorrow. And you can handle it tomorrow. Don't keep pushing it off indefinitely and say, like, Vanessa told me to just keep pushing it off. That's not what I mean. But you do it like, this is me now going into coaching mode just because I'm here already. When you guys have something that feels so massively urgent, I want you to think about, like, does this actually need to get done today? And if it is, do it today. Don't open up 75 other tabs and start doing 20 other things. Do the one thing and then let the rest be. I guarantee you, your to-do list and how long it feels, it actually isn't. It isn't all as urgent as it feels, and it isn't all as necessary in that moment that it all has to get done that day. It can wait till tomorrow, right? There's so many of us that we put our entire focus on those things, our mental, our physical health. It gets focused into that. And I will tell you, God wants you to remain whole in the process. And you can't do that if you're not resting. If you're not making yourself a priority, as cheesy as that sounds, you are. None of these things function if you're not okay, right? If everything depends on you like we think it does, why don't we act like it? Why don't we act like we are as important as we feel like we are? I mean that in the nicest way. But if you are so important to everybody in your life and your business and all of these things, why are you the last thing on your list? Why are you the last one that you pour into? You are important and you do matter, and rest matters. And God has. Why are we not operating as if we trust Him in that? Why do we feel like we have to hold the weight of every single thing? You will find that I say the ouch things. I say them. I give you that tough love because it's so important. I wish somebody would have looked at me and said that to me. So I'll move on because I could stay here all day, right? I could stay in this moment because I'm such a big advocate. You guys have no idea how important it truly is. I don't think you even realize how much you matter. God understands the depth of that, and He wants you whole in the process. He wants you okay so that you can go out and steward all of your callings. So, if you ever need a reminder, I'll tell you time and time again that it is okay. I am that person. I'll say this all the time, but I am not like when I coach the women in my community, I go against the grain of almost everything you hear in the business world, except for like the strategy, but sometimes even the strategy, right? If you know me, like it's just one of those things that I'm so passionate about this because the ways of the world we're not meant to conform to, right? But it is so easy for us to because it comes in so subtly and it looks good. Of course, hustle, right? Go harder, do more, be more, because you want to make more, right? So you got to work hard, and you do, but not if it sacrifices the things that are significant or sacred to you. You do not have to build something and sacrifice the things that are significant to you. You can keep the things that are sacred to you as you build something of significance. It's like everything that the world tells you, I flip it on its head and say, actually, that's not at all what God says. That's not at all what God has modeled for us. Actually, and for a lot of women, it's like, what you just told me, it's like the things that I challenge you on, they're actually very difficult because it goes against the nature of what we've been trained to do for so long. So rest. Okay, I'm going to read in Exodus 13, verses 31 through 36. And if you guys are just coming in, sorry about my tangent. I had to go on this point and I had to drive it home, hopefully for some of you. There's so many more places I could go with it, but it was right there. It was right there. And I would be remiss to not include it. So we are in Exodus 16, and we are talking about how God built the Sabbath so that we could rest and the importance of that in our lives. Okay, so we are going to read from Exodus 16 verses 31 through 36. And if you are just coming in, Welcome. You were right on time, and I have a gift for you. Can you guys put that in the chat, or that you're new, or good morning, or your name, or hi? We want to welcome you in. And I invite you guys to stay. If at any point you need the replay or your gift, or you want to join us for day 3 of our Hearing God Through the Noise challenge, go to the gold icon at the bottom left of your screen, and I have all of that for you there. Everything you guys need is in that spot, okay? So in Exodus 16, verses 31 through 36, it says, "In the house of Israel called its name Manna, and it was like white coriander seed, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. Then the Lord said, 'This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Fill an omer with it, to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread with which I feed you in the wilderness, when I brought you out of the land of Egypt.' And Moses said to Aaron, 'Take a pot and put an omer of manna in it, and lay it up before the Lord, and be kept for your generations, as the Lord commanded Moses.' So Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel ate manna 40 years until they came into the inhabited land. They ate manna until they came into the border in the land of Canaan. Now the omer," I feel like I'm just going to be self-conscious about that this whole time, "is 1/10 of an ephah." I probably said that wrong too, but that's where we are, okay? That's Exodus 16, verses 31 through 36. So essentially, they ate manna for 40 years. Omer. That's how I felt like that's how I said it. Now I'm like second guessing it this whole time. Omer. I feel like it looks like it's pronounced Omer, but I don't know. Anyway, an omer. I love how you guys, like, I think it's so sweet how you guys will go through with it. Like, there are just some words that I'm just not going to pronounce correctly, no matter how many times I hear it. And I love that you guys give me the pronunciation. It's my favorite. So in this moment, they ate it for 40 years. They ate it every morning for 40 years. How many of you guys are creatures of habit, and you say you eat the same thing day in and day out? Like, is there one meal that you have that you eat the same, like it's like your hyperfixation meal, and you could eat the same meal day in and day out? What is that meal? I'm also curious. For me, I could eat day in and day out oatmeal. So like the Kodiak brand has this oatmeal that is like a cinnamon and apple, and then I put PB powder in it, and then I put blueberries and strawberries in it. And I could eat that day in and day out with my iced coffee. Like, that could be just my go-to meal. If somebody said you can only eat one more meal for a sardine. Okay, that's new to me. I've actually never had a sardine, so I can't judge it. That would be my hyperfixation meal day in and day out. I think I was thinking of that because I was thinking of breakfast. So sardines, that's not weird. For lunch, I could have like a buffalo chicken wrap day in and day out. Right now, my hyperfixation meal for lunch is sweet potatoes, ground, like taco meat, like the ground beef, and then Greek yogurt, because I use that like sour cream, and cheese. So it's kind of like a potato bowl, like a taco bowl is what I should say, but with sweet potatoes. And if you guys have never tried Greek yogurt as sour cream, you need to. Sour cream or Greek yogurt is like my go-to for any sub. So imagine eating that every day for 40 years. As much as it's my hyperfixation meal, and I feel like I could eat it time and time again, can you guys imagine eating it for 40 years? Have some of you been eating the same meal for 40 years? That's very interesting to me. I've been eating mine for like a really long time. I switch it up occasionally, but those are usually my norms. You've been eating the same meal for 70 years, Brad? That's crazy. I pray that you have a beautiful weekend, Aunt Joyce. That's amazing. For 70 years. What was your meal again? I missed it. This must be an amazing meal. We have to try whatever Brad's eating day in and day out for 70 years. Ooh, bean burritos are my favorite. When I was a little girl, my mom used to make me bean burritos all the time. A poached egg on toast. Oh yeah. I could understand that. That's good. That's good. That makes sense. Bean burritos, though, I keep them really simple. It's just the flour tortilla, the bean burrito, or the refried beans, and then cheese, sometimes sour cream. Sometimes I get crazy and add taco meat in it. But have you guys ever tried making refried beans on your own? I did that once, and they just didn't hit the same. I made them in my Dutch oven, and they just weren't. I put jalapeno, and I put onion and seasonings, and it just wasn't the same. Now I'm getting hungry. I'll move on. But can you guys imagine eating that every day for 40 years? Brad can because he's been eating it for 70 years. But I don't know that I could. I guess if I had to and I was in the wilderness, I absolutely would be grateful. But I feel like this is a detail that should stop us, right? It shows us that the provision wasn't temporary. This was them getting it daily, not just for a few weeks in the wilderness while they sorted out the logistics. This was a daily thing, day in and day out. They actually knew what to expect, and it was their primary food source for an entire nation for 4 decades, for 2 million people. I also think too, obviously some people passed away, but I also wonder, I didn't research this, so apologies if I get this part wrong. But I don't remember how many people actually entered into Canaan. And I know that there were people that pass away. There was wars. There's a lot of stuff. But if there's 40 years, is that number still 2 million or is it more? I know people pass away, but there's also children being born. I wonder if it was more than 2 million. But they were fed every single morning for that period of time. So then when they actually crossed the border of Canaan, it stopped. And I find that interesting. So in Joshua chapter 5, verse 12, it says, then the manna ceased on the day after they had eaten the produce of the land. And the children of Israel no longer had manna, but they ate the food of the land of Canaan that year. I also think too, how good would that kind of be? If you've had that same meal for 40 years, or the same provision for 40 years, and then it stops and you go get something new, that'd probably be pretty good too. You're grateful for the provision, but it's kind of nice to have a variety sometimes. I find it interesting that in Joshua chapter 5, verse 12, what I just read, it tells us that the manna ceased on the day that after they ate of the produce of the land. So that the provision was exactly what the people needed for exactly as long as they needed it. So when the land could sustain them, the manna stopped. So their provision was matched to the need that there was such a provision that no human system could even replicate. There is nothing how many of you have tried to grow a garden? I did last year. I grew a garden and I threw my back out picking up an empty water can. So then I had to stop because I was bedridden almost for 6 months last year. But I grew a garden and half my stuff died even when I was taking care of it. I couldn't do that. I couldn't sustain myself on the land for 40 years. And I find it so incredible that the moment that the land, the provision was matched to such precision that we couldn't even replicate it as humans. I want you to see, though, what Moses does before the chapter closes. Okay, so he takes one jar and he fills it with manna, and he puts it before the testimony, and it stays there. Let me go back to where this is in Exodus, okay? Oh, wait. I was in Exodus. It says, then Moses, this is in Exodus chapter 16, verse 32, and it says, then Moses said, this is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Fill an omer with it, to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread with which I feed you in the wilderness, when I brought you out of the land of Egypt. And then Moses said to Aaron, take a pot and put an omer of manna in it, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel ate manna 40 years until they came to an inhabited land, and they ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. Okay? So what this is it's not practical. Like, you can't eat it. It's not for your current generation's survival. It's so that future generations can see it. Like, that you could actually look at actual manna from the wilderness and know that God has done this. So that their ancestors had known that their ancestors had been fed, and that the provision was actually real. Like, this jar of manna, it ended up in the Ark of the Covenant in Hebrews 9:4, like chapter 9, verse 4. I feel like one of you said that in the chat too. So what happens in Hebrews 9:4, I'm going to read it for us. If I can get to it. So in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 4, it says, oh my goodness, chapter 9 is a long one. It says, which had the golden censer and the Ark of the Covenant overlaid on all sides with gold, in which were the golden pot that had the manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the tablets of the covenant. Okay. So, Paul is actually describing the ark, like that the ark actually contains the golden jar that's holding the manna. So the provision that started as a daily bread, the daily bread in the wilderness, it actually traveled throughout Israel's it traveled through their history inside of one of the most sacred objects that they possessed. And it's still there centuries later, like the physical evidence of what God had done. God had, he took care of what they would not forget. He took care of it so that when they had that to go back to. I want you to see who preserved it. It wasn't the people. Moses made the decision, and he recognized the significance of what was happening even while it was still happening. So he gathered the evidence of God's faithfulness while the provision is still ongoing. And he did that so that a generation who hadn't been there would be able to see it. I feel like there's something in that. Like, somebody has to pay attention in real time. There's somebody that has to recognize what God is doing while it's still happening and still make a decision that it's worth preserving. We know that somebody was Moses, right? How often do we move through a season of provision without stopping to record it? Like, we get the answer to the prayer and then we move on to the next need that we have. We receive the thing that we waited for within a few months, and it's become the floor that we stand on while we worry about what comes next. Moses put the manna in a jar, and he did it on purpose before they were in the promised land. And he did that so the evidence of God's faithfulness was going to outlast the season that produced it. There's going to be two places in Scripture that I want to hold alongside Exodus 16 because they both change what you're going to see in this chapter. So the first one is John 6. At this point in time, Jesus is actually speaking to a crowd that has been miraculously fed. We know this story. Most of us do, right? This is the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and the 5,000 people. So the crowd that follows him, the next day, they're actually looking for more. And Jesus actually says something that has been sitting in Exodus 16 the whole time. Remember, I referenced it, right? He says, I am the bread of life. Then he says, your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness and they're passed away, right? This is the bread which comes down from heaven, that one may eat of it and will not pass away. He is marking a direct comparison. He was saying the manna was real and the manna sustained him, and the manna was always pointing to something beyond itself. He is that manna that rose from heaven and sustains us. That daily bread that keeps us alive for the day is different from the living bread that addresses like a deeper hunger, right? He fills a need that is deeper than the hunger, right? There, like when he meets the woman at the well, he says, I have something for you that can quench your thirst in a way that water can't. Like, I don't remember exactly how he says it, but he has something for her that is deeper. And it's the exact same in this place. God isn't dismissing, or Jesus isn't dismissing the manna. He's saying the manna was actually a preview for you. The people who received it, it needed more. Here it is. Yes, I am the water of life. Thank you. The people who received it, they needed more. Now here it is. Here's the more that you're looking for. The connection between Exodus 16 and John 6 isn't incidental, right? We know that Jesus chose that language very deliberately. He reached back to one of the most iconic provision stories in Israel's history and said, I am what this was actually pointing to. That daily bread, when you were in the wilderness, it was actually a pattern. It was a daily returning, a daily acknowledgement that this is where the provision comes from. It's something outside of yourself. And that living bread that he offers, it requires that same posture. It's a daily return, a daily dependence on him, not a one-time transaction, right? The second one is in Matthew chapter 6, verse 11. It is the Lord's Prayer. And it says, give us this day our daily bread. That phrase actually lands differently now that we've been in Exodus 16, right? For some of you, if you didn't know that before, give us our bread, our daily bread. Jesus isn't teaching people just how to pray for food. He's teaching them the posture of manna. He's saying it is daily, it is weekly, not annually. Sorry, it's daily, it's not weekly or annually or occasionally or once for all time. That prayer is actually structured the same way that the provision was structured. He's telling you to come back, to ask again, to return to the source daily. The prayer that Jesus taught, it carries the DNA of the wilderness provision. These are a people who knew how to receive daily from God. They learned to pray that in that same rhythm. And Jesus teaches his disciples that this is how you pray. This is the posture. I want you to come back today and ask for today. Trust for tomorrow when tomorrow comes. But come back to him for every need every day. Be in that posture of dependence on him. He is that source. So we are in Exodus 16 and we have covered the complaint. We have covered him appearing in the cloud, the quail and the manna, the Sabbath provision, the jar of manna, and it being preserved for future generations. We're about to come to the synthesis section. And we're going to close the loop on the word that you guys gave to me throughout this study and at the beginning. And if you're just joining, that is okay. I'm going to come back to all of those things, so stay here. And if you're just joining us, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it looks like from wherever you're at. It's almost 11 o'clock where I am. We are walking verse by verse through Exodus 16 and talking about what God was forming in his people through the daily provision of manna. So say hello. We want to welcome you in. You are never late to this study. I genuinely believe that you arrive exactly as you need to, and if you want to get caught up, there are replays. And if you are new, I have a gift for you. At the bottom of your screen, there is a gold icon, and there are the replays, there is a new live viewer gift, There is our Hearing God Through the Noise challenge, which we're going to do right here after this live. But I want to welcome you in. Good morning. Good morning to each and every one of you. I want to say something about the structure of this chapter that I think is kind of the whole point. So if you are just joining, that is totally fine, because maybe you just needed to hear this part. Exodus 16 is not primarily a chapter about bread. A lot of people read it in that way. It is a chapter about formation. God is not just feeding hungry people. He's forming a people who had been conditioned to look at a human authority, specifically Pharaoh, for the provision of their daily needs. These were people in bondage. They don't plant, they don't gather. They receive what they're given from whoever holds the power. They don't have any choices, right? There's 400 years of that. Israel's provision, it came through Egypt's system. Their daily bread was meditated through captivity. And now God is teaching something that they've never practiced. They're going directly to Him. And if you guys have been following along with what we have covered so far, notice how each and every time they have a complaint, who do they go to? They go to Moses and Aaron. They don't go to God because they're not used to going to God for what they need. God is having to teach them to go directly to Him, to return to Him, to trust in what God said is going to be, it's going to actually be there. It's learning that the provider is not distant and that He is not withholding and that He's not measuring out just enough to keep them compliant. That is not who God is. He is faithful. He is daily. He is specifically, and He's doing it in the right amount that they need, on a rhythm that they can depend on. He knows exactly how our human minds work because He designed them. So when we come to Him with a complaint or a need or a moment of distress, whatever that is, He's not surprised by that. He has already accounted for it. He knows what you're going to say before you even say it, and He already has a plan. He's not surprised by it, and He's not judging you for it, because He knows why you think in the way you do, because He has seen the very beginning of who you were before you ever even existed, and He knows the circumstances that got you to this point. He's been walking with you in every element of it. Would you be walking with somebody all your life in every moment of every day and then see, oh wait, they're hungry, and then be like, oh, you're hungry? And know how frustrated they are because you've seen what it took for them to get to this point, and then be mad at them? Maybe some of us would, but I don't think you'd be surprised as to why. God is with us in every single element of every day, every second. He has been with us before we were even a thought, right? A thought in our parents' minds, right? Our parents sometimes say that. Before you were even a thought in my mind. He already knew, so He's not surprised by it. He designed the way that our brains work, and He knows that He has to retrain them, because our brains are not designed for obedience. They're designed for survival. I'm going to ingrain that in you guys, like in your minds. Our brains are not trained for obedience. They are trained for survival. That's just how they work. They seek out comfort. They seek out what's easy for us, right? And He has to say, I need you to work against that. It's going to be hard, and I'm going to work with you. I need you to be faithful, to depend on me daily. So I want you to understand that this is not a small thing to learn. There's about 400 years of dependence on a system that didn't love them. That doesn't disappear just in 30 days of them walking with the Lord. God knew that. That manna wasn't a quick fix. It was a 40-year curriculum. Here's what I want you to hold alongside your own story. Many of us have learned to depend on systems, on structures, on relationships, or even circumstances to provide things that God wants to be the source of. A security that comes from a bank balance, the worth that comes from productivity, a peace that comes from other people's stability. These things are not necessarily wrong, but when the source shifts, when the system changes, or when the relationship ends, or when your circumstances change, and the provision that we're depending on is no longer available, we tend to do what Israel does, or did, right? We look back to the place that was not good for us, and we call it good because at least it was predictable. God doesn't always remove those sources to punish us. Sometimes he removes them because he is trying to teach us something about where the actual provision comes from. That wilderness is not the destination, it's the classroom. What are you currently in a wilderness about? What is your wilderness season? Where are you in a place where God may have to remove it from you so that you can fully depend on him for it? Not a big dramatic thing, like the daily ordinary thing. The need that keeps coming back. It keeps coming back around and asking you to trust it again. The thing that this chapter is on. The invitation of Manna is not pretend you don't need anything. It's go out every single morning and receive what he has promised. Return to him with your actual need. Don't try to stockpile your way out of it, like a lot of people do, right? Don't try to solve the need in a way that removes what the requirement. I'll say that again. Don't try to solve the need in a way that removes the requirement to trust. Daily bread requires daily return. So for some of us, that's the formation that we're in right now, and we're calling it a crisis. And I mean that with all the love and the grace in the world, because I know that the moment that you're in is probably really hard. So I don't say that insensitively. But so often we are so quick to call the seasons that we're in spiritual warfare, or the enemy, or that God is silent, or that we got ourselves into this mess, whatever that is, right? A lot of times we run to that and we say, why am I facing so much opposition? I want to gently reframe your mind, because some of us are in formation. If you are in this season, there's something to be learned. I know that sounds cliche, but there's no other way to say it. There's something to be learned, because if God is allowing it, he's building a deeper dependence on him that the comfortable seasons would not have shown you. Here's what this chapter says about who God actually is. Because he heard them while they were complaining, and he responded before they even corrected their own posture. He actually designed the provision to be personal, like a very personal amount. Each family was going to receive a very specific amount tailored to their family, in a daily rhythm, in a sufficient supply. He built rest into the system before he even commanded it. He preserved the evidence of his faithfulness so that people who had not been there could still see it. The God in this chapter is not offended by our needs. He doesn't require you to have it together before he pays attention to what you lack. He's not rationing or withholding or anything based on your performance. We can't earn it, therefore it cannot be taken away due to insufficient performance. His provision and his salvation and his goodness and who he is not dependent on us as human beings. What God was doing in this moment is he was feeding a people who wished out loud that they had perished in Egypt. And what did he do? He fed them the next morning anyway, and the morning after that for 40 years. So I want to give him a shout of praise, because he deserves that and more. Can we type, He provides before I get it right. Or you can just say he provides, whatever. But he provides before I even get it right. I don't have to come to him in any way because he provides regardless, because that's who he is. He provides before I get it right. Because that's what the text actually says. It is not dependent on me. Yes, there are parts that I do have to hold up that I have to show up for, right? But he's going to provide for me because that's who he is. And I am so grateful for that. And I ask you to put that in the chat, because I think the best way that we can honor him is to remember who he is. He wants our hearts. He wants us to depend on him because that's who he is. He's the provider. He is Jehovah Jireh. So if this morning it met you somewhere very specific and it was what you needed, if the word that you put in the beginning of the live is something that you've been carrying alone, and you feel like you're doing everything that you're supposed to do and the provision feels uncertain, and you're like, I don't know what to do, I built something exactly for this moment. We are gonna go into this next section of the live. It's only about like 20-ish minutes. So if you guys want to stay on just for a little bit longer, it's free. I do this every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We are in day 3. It's a 3-day experience, and we're on day 3, and that is okay if you are joining just on day 3, because I give you all of the previous days. And I actually think that I need to make sure that day 3 is actually showing. I think right now it just has day 2. So let me double check that it's in there. But we're going to move into that here in just a minute, okay? And I do that because it's for moments just like this, where we are silencing the noise of what our brains tell us and focusing on the Lord and understanding where the actual provision comes from. So I think day 3 should be on there right now. Let me double check. Yep, it should be in there now. I have to put that one specifically so that you guys get all of the replays from the previous days. There is no fee. It is free. It's free to all of you guys. So let me turn my music back on. Okay. All right. So if you go to the link at the bottom left hand of your screen, everything that's there is free. There's nothing that I'm charging you for. Okay, we're going to go into that. But at the beginning of the slide, I asked you to put one word or one phrase in the comments for the area of your life where you're waiting on God to provide something. And I want to come back to that. And if you didn't answer that, you can put it in the comments if you want to. And we'll pray over that. I feel like Israel had a word too. Probably a few of them. They probably felt like my word would be food or water or safety or direction. They could have listed the needs, because they were real needs. And God knew every single one of them before Moses ever brought the complaints to him. What this chapter shows us is that God doesn't need you to present the need perfectly before he responds to it. He heard them while they were still getting the words wrong. He planned the provision before he revealed the plan. God designed I was reading one of your comments. He designed the daily rhythm not because he needed the structure, but because they needed a practice of returning. They needed that practice for them. So the word that you put in the comments, it's not too small for him. It's not too big either. It's not too repetitive. It's not too ordinary. The fact that you need it again today, it's not evidence that he missed something the last time. It's evidence that he designed the provision to be received daily, which means he intends for you to come back to him for it daily. The manna didn't fall once. It fell every single morning. And his faithfulness towards your need, it doesn't diminish just because the need keeps coming. The whole point of this chapter, the daily return, that's not a problem. The daily return is actually the practice. That practice is what forms, and it forms a people who actually know their God rather than just knowing what he can do. So that word that you guys put in, go back to it. Because I know that the Lord hears every one of your complaints, every one of your needs for your finances, your self-discipline, your family's health, your restoration, your spouse. He sees them. And I know that he's provided. He does it every morning. He does it before we even understand what we're looking at, before we even know what to call it. He did it for them before they even knew there was a Sabbath, before they learned not to try to stockpile the provision. He provided and he will. And I know that everything that you guys are putting in, not only has he provided, but he will do it again and again and again. Okay, so we're going to close the Bible study portion in prayer, and you guys can go ahead and put in your prayer requests as well. And we'll pray over them. So you guys can go ahead and continue to put them in here in the chat, and I'm going to pray. All right. Lord, I know that you see every prayer as it comes in. Thank you for the provision. Thank you for knowing every need that we have. Thank you for not requiring us to come in any certain way for you to provide for us. Thank you for seeing our need before we even knew that there was anything, and you already made a way. Even if we can't recognize or we don't have the eyes to see, Father, I pray that you highlight in the ways that we can see you more, to hear you more, to recognize you more. The things that we need to surrender, that we're holding on to, that keep us from having that full dependence on you. Thank you for being so beautiful to us, Father. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for choosing us to bear this cross as hard as it is, Father. Thank you for seeing us as worthy. Thank you for being patient with us as we complain, as we misunderstand, in the ways that we don't always come to you first. Thank you for always showing up for us regardless. Please give us strength. Give us strength to go through these challenges, as hard as they are, Father. We know that you are right here, and in our weakness, your strength is made perfect. That we need to renew our minds daily and keep our eyes on you, because you are the provider. Thank you for this live and this opportunity to connect, to hear your word, and to know more of you. I pray that today is a comfort, that it brings a peace to understanding maybe just a little bit more of why we have to go through these things. So that in the seasons that we have that are a victory and answered prayer, where we see your provision in fullness, that we can rejoice knowing that it was you that got us through everything, and that you will continue to be that. Thank you for all that you do, Father. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. All right. My eyes are like readjusting. I thank you guys for being on here. We're going to move into our Hearing God Through the Noise challenge. We're on day 3. You guys can stay. Okay. But I also thank you guys for spending your morning or afternoon or evening, whatever that looks like. It's morning for me. On Monday, we're going to be in Exodus 7. So if you thought the manna was revealing, I want you to wait until Israel is thirsty again. And Moses strikes the rock. There's a reason why God lets that same kind of need come back a second time. And it's going to say something very specific about how God responds to his people and when they test him. Katie, I pray that your daughter has a beautiful birthday. If you guys end up watching this on the replay, put that in the comments. Say hello. Okay? Say hello. Tell us what stood out. Come follow us here on TikTok. Watch it live. If this morning helped you, I encourage you guys to share it with somebody. You can share the replays. They're in the vault. You can share them with them. So if you guys are hopping off and you're not staying for the challenge, sending you all hugs. I'm going to see you on Monday morning. But if you are staying, then let's get to it. I got to get it open, okay? We are in day 3 of hearing God through the noise. This will be short. Day 3 is always a little bit shorter. And if you guys haven't gotten any of the other days, that is okay. You can catch up in the replays. All right? Okay. I pray that you all have a beautiful weekend. All right. So day 3 of hearing God through the noise. This day is actually not about learning something new. It's about changing how you move when the noise shows up anyway. So if you guys have been with us through days 1 and 2, you know that as you step further into your calling, my volume went out. I don't think it did. Did it, you guys? You guys know that as you step further into your calling, there's noise that comes in. And what ends up happening is that a lot of times we go through interference patterns. And we named 5 of them. They're distraction, intimidation, comparison, accusation, and I can never name the 5. There's accusation, distraction, intimidation, comparison, and whatever the last one is. I'll go through it because it'll come up in my notes, okay? Confusion. Maybe I did name them all. Confusion. Okay. All right. So we named 5 of them, and they tend to show up at the moment that you're about to step into your obedience, right? There's so many of them, but we went through just 5 of them. I want to say something that I think some of you might have been waiting to hear as you've gone through this. God doesn't wait for the silence to lead you. He leads you through the noise. If silence was required before obedience, most of Scripture actually wouldn't exist. So I think some of us are like, how do I make this interference just go silent completely? I don't believe that it will, because I don't believe that the enemy is going to stop when you are on kingdom assignment. It's just going to change. His strategy will change up. When that one interference stops, another one's going to come into play. The goal of what we're going to be doing is just to recognize it so that we can counter it when it comes through. Here's what actually happens for most of us. When things feel uncertain, like when you can't get still enough, when the interference is so loud, we end up waiting. And you think like, if I could just get more focused, or if I could be more sure or more settled, then you would move, right? Then I could just walk in obedience of what God is calling me to. That feels reasonable to us, right? That's the responsible thing to do. But what it actually does is it hands that interference exactly what it needs, which is time. Jesus says in John 10 that his sheep know his voice. He doesn't say that they strain for it or that they wait until everything else goes quiet. He says they recognize it. And that recognition is actually relational to him. It's not something that you achieve just by going quieter. It's something that develops through proximity and practice. So you don't have to wait to feel certain before you move. And if you do, understand that that's common and that there's nothing wrong with you and your faith. Okay? Your brain is actually just doing what it's designed to do when interference comes into play. So here's the neuroscience behind it. Okay? When your brain senses some sort of uncertainty, it looks for safety. So for those of us that carry a lot of things, safety tends to look like us waiting or thinking longer or needing more confirmation. It's trying to get it exactly right before it goes anywhere. So spiritually, it feels like discernment, but neurologically, it's avoidance. The noise isn't proof that you need to stop in your calling. It's not proof that you should stop going. It's a signal that your nervous system actually needs orientation, not more information. You don't need the noise to disappear. You just need to know what to do when it shows up. So I want to bring it into this room and where we're at for today. I'm going to ask you guys to comment something, and I want to know what is actually true for you. So when I'm going to bring this sentence and you can just put one word, whatever that looks like, and I'll give you some examples, okay? When I think about what God is asking me to do, The thing that stops me most is it what if I'm wrong? Or I don't feel ready? Or I need more confirmation? Or I don't trust myself? Or what are people going to think? What is it for you? And I don't want you to clean it up. Just don't make it pretty. Just say it. Just name it. I want you to pay attention to what comes through for you. That's not a coincidence, okay? That is the interference running that same pattern on a lot of us at the same time. Look how many of you have such similar ones. Fear is a big one. There's doubt. There's ourselves, right? Needing confirmation or feeling judged. How many of those coincide with those 5 that I just gave you yesterday? You know what I hear when I see myself? That's accusation. Who do I think I am? I'm not good enough for this. I can't. This person's further along. I'm not qualified enough. Or fear. Fear sounds like, to me, intimidation. That this thing looks too big for you. That it's more than what you can handle. That you're not going to get far. That you're not. You fill in the blank, right? It sounds like intimidation to me. The confidence, that one is, to me, that's the comparison one. The not having the supplies that you need, that to me sounds like distraction. That when my health gets better, my finances are better, that it's not now, it's not no, it's just later, right? I wasn't sure it was God's voice. That one to me sounds like confusion, right? So many of those things. Are you sure this is for me, Lord? Yep, these are so many. That's what they sound like when we look at them from the outside, right? That is not a coincidence. That's interference running the same pattern on all of us at the same time. So we're not trying to silence the thoughts today. That will come in time. That can't happen all at once today. As much as I wish it would, it doesn't. We have to train our brains to think that way. We have to change how we operate when they show up. There's 3 parts to this, and none of them are going to be complicated. The first thing is noticing, which you just did. You say it. You hear that noise when it comes in. You're not analyzing it. You're not correcting yourself for having it. You're just noticing it. That single act already interrupts that loop in your mind because you're no longer inside of it. You're observing it. The next thing you're going to do is orient. You say, God is with me here. You don't do that after you figure it out or after you feel better. You do it right here. Your nervous system, it settles through presence, not through answers. God doesn't step back when things feel unclear. He stays. He is present with us in every moment. And then what do you do after that? You move. You ask, what is that next faithful step with Him? I don't need the full plan. I don't need the outcome of what it is. Not when everything needs to be, not everything that it needs to become. You just take the next step. You just walk with Him. So I want to do it together now. I want you to think of the thing that God has been asking you to move towards. Is it a business? Is it a new job? Is it a new relationship? Is it leaving a toxic friendship? Is it setting boundaries? What is one step further into your calling? What has He been asking you to move towards? You don't have to put it in the chat. You can if you want to, but I just want you to think of what it is because I know that you guys have some idea. What has He been asking you to move towards? The thing that you keep coming back to. The one thing that keeps bringing up the most noise, which you guys went to on day 1, right? The thing that you noticed where the interference keeps coming up the most. Notice the noise. Orient to His presence and then ask Him, what is that next faithful step? So you noticed it and now you say, God, You are with me here. Right? You are with me here now, God. And then you move, whether that's sending a text, applying for a job, planning for your LLC, rebranding, refreshing, pivoting, leaving a job. I don't know what that looks like, right? Ask yourself, what is that next faithful step? You can put that in the comments. Is it emailing? Is it creating an outline? Is it applying, scheduling, posting, recording, or even just simply saying yes? That is the movement. That's what today is about. How do you take that next step? What is the one thing that you can do in the next 24 hours? That applies for everybody here. I want to talk about why this works over time. So confidence doesn't come before obedience. It comes through obedience practiced with God. Your brain learns through repetition, not insight. And your faith actually strengthens through participation. It doesn't happen in the certainty. So every single time that you move through the noise, instead of waiting for it to stop, you're teaching your nervous system that God is trustworthy in motion. So you're not waiting to become somebody who can just do things or do this that God is calling you into. You're learning how to move with Him as you are right now. You don't need the noise to go quiet. That's why I'm not coaching you through that element of it, because you don't need it. You just need a way to respond when it shows up, because it will. That's what these 3 days gave you. It's not a formula or a system. It's actually a way with God. It's a way with Him when everything in you wants to wait. Okay? That's what today is. That's what these last 3 days have been. And if you have missed any of them, the replays are available for each and every one of you, and you get to hold on to them. This is normally a piece that the women in my coaching community pay for, that I'm giving to you guys as my thank you for being with me on this live. Okay? Do any of you have questions? You'll check your email, and if you didn't sign up for any of the emails, do that. It's at the gold. If you see a gold icon at the bottom left hand of your screen, you can go there and get them. I need to move my legs before they fall off. Ugh. Okay, so everything we covered from day 1, day 2, and day 3, all the counters, all the interference patterns, all of those things are available for you guys, even if you just joined right now. You're going to have it all in one place. If you just joined today, you're going to get like 3 previous emails, but that's okay. If you want to keep going in this and you're like, this is what I need. If you want to keep building a community of women who are doing the same thing, I want you guys to check out my website. That's my plug for you. I don't normally do that, but I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you about the more that there is to this. Okay, it's in the link in my bio. I want you to see what this is actually about, because I know that so many of you actually need this, and it would be unfair for me to keep that. Because if God gave it to me, it wasn't for me to steward and hold on to my own. Okay? Eden and Empire is my community. The site is edenandempire.com. And I go through more of this in the Kingdom Mandate, which that's available in that little section at the bottom of your screen, and that gold icon where it pulls up everything. I will say this. If that Kingdom Mandate requires you to like log in or something, let me know. If for some reason you don't receive it, or like it doesn't allow you to go to it and you want it, let me know. Don't just be like, oh, well, I guess it doesn't work. Like, let me know. I want to make sure you guys get that. Okay? And just know I'm available for so many more things. We have our free Facebook community. I said that twice today on this live. I didn't mean to. We have our free community. We have our prayer calls on Tuesdays. And if you want more in depth in your business and you're trying to find clarity, you feel like something is just missing, I'll coach you through that. Okay? So we do these Bible studies Monday through Friday. The replays are available for each and every one of you if you're new here. And I'm going to see you guys again on Monday. Since it's Friday, we have the weekend. But if you guys don't have any more questions, I'm going to go eat lunch. I'm not usually already hungry, but today my stomach is like, maybe it was us talking about all the food. I don't know. But I thank you guys for doing this challenge with us, and I thank you for being with me day in and day out. I am sending you all hugs, and I pray that you have a beautiful weekend and a blessed day.